Hi, my name is Rachel Thompson. I'm a member of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. I'm here in support of the Easton Book Festival. And in this reading series, I've been reading stories of mine which have appeared in Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group anthologies. And I've also read stories from my own anthologies. What I'm going to do for you now is to read a brand new story, which will appear in the next Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group anthology. This anthology is themed like all the others, and the theme of this one is writing across America. And this story is called The Letter Carrier. It's about 2,000 words, and this will appear in the next anthology, perhaps not in this exact form because it will be edited. But here you go, and I will read it. The automation age was predictable even in New York City. Anything out of the ordinary is news. Real news, big news, news to do with important things in the world wasn't reported being thought bad for public morale. Human interest stories were popular, and one oddball came to the public's attention. Working from home like most people, Chelsea Chase would send the juicy stuff in by messenger on paper. She received job orders the same way. The internet wasn't trustworthy and competition was keen. A new assignment came to her in the most unusual way. Chelsea Chase's phone rang. It was an actual phone call. It rang 3 times before she remembered people used to actually talk on phones. It was the office. Editor White himself was calling. Chase, get you over to Manhattan and find this character if he is real. A picture of the man came up on screen. But Perry, she said, I got video. Why can't I just do the job here and not good enough? Go see. You know how they fake footage. White hung up. There was nothing for it but to do the job as directed. She needed to get out of the cube anyway. A little fresh, dirty air might be nice for a change. She could bill for the out of office time too. She didn't mind getting paid for a wild goose chase. Next page. On her first lap, the letter carrier appeared to be a homeless man as she zipped by. That he looked too good to be homeless is what tipped her off. When reporter Chelsea Chase spotted him next, she almost crashed her Z-bike into a messenger on a razor board in her hurry to pull over. The man does exist. Yeah, that's him, she thought. The postal worker carried a huge leather satchel, a real animal product, on a wide strap around his bony shoulder. His blue uniform had a thin black stripe running down each leg and sleeve. Released jailbirds wore blue pants and carried big bags too, although they slung them more like Santa Claus. She crossed the street in the middle of the block, dodging urban parcel and speedy mail delivery driverless trucks. There weren't many manned cars in sight, so she felt safe enough to risk a crossing. Excuse me. She didn't worry about the messengers, who were well-practiced pedestrian dodgers. The private drivers were the deadly ones. She ran up behind him. Mr. Albert, are you Mr. Albert? Hi, Chelsea Chase. City Beat, Zap News, she said out of breath. He moved fast for an old man, each booted foot thrust out a bit sideways and back again in an odd duck-walking locomotion. His long legs took big, long strides. Chelsea had to pump her legs in go-cycle fashion to catch up with him, although he didn't seem to be in a hurry. Why, yes, I am. He let her catch up. New here in Turtle Bay, are you? He winked. His wrinkled and long but kindly face stopped her advance. People that old were rare. People doing physical work at his age were unheard of. His uniform was tidy but old-fashioned. Turtle Bay was the only historic section left in Manhattan, and he fit in as if by design. The block had been preserved in authentic, decrepit condition, although Mr. Albert appeared fit himself. I don't get it, she said. Why walk? These old brownstones ain't fitted for modern mail delivery, he said. She had prepared questions. That didn't answer any of them. The big one was why do it? Why are you his person? What are his personal reasons? She had her handy cam ready. She opened her mouth to ask the first set of questions, but a messenger on a hoverboard yelled, "Cut!" and zipped in between them. "Oh, that's Phil," he said. "He delivers for the U.S. Mail for Speedy Mail, a subcontractor. I am a little late myself. Come along if you like." He walked away. She followed. His long legs propelled him at a good clip, although he didn't struggle. He stopped at a four-story walk-up brownstone with a white marble facade and glided up the long stair stoop with a dancer's grace. Chelsea stopped on the walkway, bent at the waist, hands on her knees, and sucked air. He rang the bell before she regained enough oxygen to spit out the next question. "Hello, Miss Vonnegut," he said, handing her a small bundle. "Looks like the usual. I'm sorry, but there's another rejection letter. Gosh, Mr. Albert, I could paper my walls with the damn things. I pray and pray, but it seems I'm not getting anywhere." Next page. It's like this, I like to say, Alice. God helps those who help themselves. Don't you dare give up. I have a guest here with me today. He pointed a thumb behind him. Next time I'm by, we'll talk more. You can show me what you have then. Is that all right? Oh, I don't know what I would do without you, Mr. Albert. I guess we both better get back to work. Mr. Albert skated down the stairs and waited for Chelsea to straighten up. "You know them by name?" Chelsea asked, still a little breathless. "Of course I do. I walk this route. Miss Vonnegut is a distant relative of a famous dead writer, Kurt Vonnegut." He waited for a reaction, but got none. "I see you don't know him. Too bad." He proceeded on smartly. Up the next stoop he went. The door swung in, and Mr. Albert was met by a trim young man. The letter carrier held up a handwritten letter. "It's fat. Grandfather has a lot to say to you." He squeezed the envelope between his fingers. "See, I told you he'd write back. Nobody can ignore a personal handwritten letter." "You're right. Writing to him was the right move. Thanks, Mr. Albert. I owe you one." Mr. Albert disappears into the building before she made the first landing. This four-story walk-up had four apartments on each floor and no elevator. Chelsea opted to wait on the sidewalk, fearing she would lose him in the maze. Next page. Chelsea had a hard time keeping up, even though Mr. Albert slowed down for her. On occasion, as her rest allowed, she fired off questions as they went. She tried to get her basic questions out first: where, when, what, and so on. She always built up to the hard questions by going through the easy ones first. The letter carrier stopped to take mail off a robotic messenger, and he sorted the new items there on the sidewalk before putting them in his sack. Having the air and the opportunity, Chelsea fired off a question. "Mr. Albert, why does the government even allow you to do this job?" "Seniority," he said. "I've been with the PO 60 years. They're stuck with me." He turned and flew up the next stairway. He didn't seem stuck to her. The building was 6 stories with no elevator. The post boxes in the foyer were ignored as he pulled open the inner entry door. She yelled, "Hey!" He stopped. She made it the rest of the way up the stairs and into the foyer. "Where are you going? What about the post boxes?" "People steal. These letters are important. I can't let that happen," Mr. Albert said. Off he went, bounding up a flight of stairs like it was flat ground. She didn't get to her big question all day. In between stops, he told her the history of every little thing as they walked. Mr. Albert spoke fondly of the people who came and went over his years on the route. He knew all of their stories and all the places they had been, and he shared a few zingers. He knew everyone on the block. He waved at every bike messenger, scooter jockey, and hoverboard delivery person that zipped by. "Mr. Albert, why aren't you—" "See that hydrant? That's where Jimmy the Knife took a bullet in the 1930s. He tried to intimidate a newspaper reporter who was packing." The letter carrier chuckled. "The pen is mightier than a sword, but a 38 works pretty well too." Up the stoop he went and disappeared. "What's a hydrant? Packing? Packing what?" The next stops were much the same. The residents would meet him at the door, even though he didn't ring the bell. She didn't follow him up into the multi-story apartments. She got him on the video, engaged in pleasant conversations when she could film. He'd offer a little advice each time. He stopped to pet every dog on the street. After leaving one building where no one answered the door, he seemed disappointed. This place, he said, this is where E.B. White lived, famous writer, top man. He doesn't have any relatives here, but Mr. Trout, who bought the place, is a writer as well. Sorry, she said, I never heard of E.B. White. That's too bad. I wish Trout were here. Trout's an interesting man. He's been all over America. He's got stories, I'll tell you. With him, you can take a trip and never leave the farm. I already got enough bystanders on my camera. In my day, people wrote things on paper and didn't need the IA to write it for them, he said. People used to need to know how to write, even produce video. People used to go places and see things in person. You should try it sometimes. What, writing or travel? Yes, do that. Do them together. You are doing it now. She thought that was an odd idea. Why would anyone go anywhere when everything is on computers? The hologram theater seemed so real. Who could tell the difference? Mr. Albert continued on and finished his route, still full of good humor and vigor. Chelsea was dog-tired, but glad they ended up where she had started. Her Z-bike was still where she had left it, and she forgot to lock it. She had lost track of her questions and didn't have time to go back over the recording to see what she had missed. As they parted, she remembered the big question. Mr. Albert, let me ask before I go. Actually, it's Lovecraft. My name is Albert. Ask away. Why do you do it? Walk like this. What do you gain? Gain? I never thought about it that way. I'm here for the letters, if that's what you mean. I'm a letter carrier. Gosh, it's important. By God, Mr. Albert's voice went up an octave. Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. He stopped her and himself by raising a hand. Taking a deep breath, he tipped his cap to her. Young lady, letters are important. The written word passes through my hands every day. This block is full of writers, dead and living, and the living still write letters. Living letter writers need living letter carriers. We belong together. We hold each other up. I'm honored to serve them. I'm sure you are, but don't you believe in letters, Miss Chase? A postal driverless electric car pulled up. I suppose I do, she said. He winked at her. I gotta punch out. They'll load my letter bag overnight. Bye for now. He got into the back of the U.S. Postal Service self-driving passenger car with his old leather sack, now empty, in his lap. He took off his cap, dropped it into the sack, and let his white hair flutter in the car's air conditioning. He was the picture of contentment, and she didn't film it. When he waved goodbye, she waved back instead of recording. She had no idea what to say about the last known U.S. Postal Service letter carrier, but she decided she will write that script herself. But first, to warm up, she thought to write that letter to her parents she'd been putting off, and write it on paper. She used to draw all over her school papers as a child, and her parents praised her art no matter how the teachers complained. Email has no heart, she said. Paper's better. The old bodega where Kurt Vonnegut used to get his stamps, envelopes, and smokes still stood. Albert had pointed out the historic marker plaque she had never noticed before. The stationery store was walking distance from where she had parked her Z-bike, so she walked, intent on trying her hand at letter writing. Chelsea Chase left the store with a big canvas bag, satchel stuffed to overflowing with writing and art supplies, but somehow the burden made her feel lighter. She slung her sack over her shoulder like Santa's literary elf. Chelsea skated right on past her Z-bike and floated home on inspiration's wings. The end. And this will appear in the next Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group anthology, and I hope you will pick up a copy. See you at the book fair. What do you think of that story?
How about it?
You've heard it.